1,656 years is the exact time that elapsed between Adam and the flood. The Bible summarizes that immense era in just a few verses that we read quickly. However, a deep analysis reveals that those centuries hide the greatest secret of history. Why did God decide to meticulously erase the achievements of that first human civilization? The response suggests that, during those years, an unprecedented technological revolution took place. It was such a dangerous and rapid advance that it threatened to destroy the natural order of creation. Imagine if someone summarized our entire modern era in just 3 brief and vague paragraphs. All our science, art, and technology would be erased from memory, as if they had never existed. That is exactly what happened with the mysterious Antediluvian years and their lost culture. The real question is not why there was a flood, but what humanity discovered to deserve it. Genesis 4 provides us with archaeological clues that often go unnoticed by the average reader. In the verses about the descendants of Cain lies the trace of a super-civilization. Cain, the first murderer and fugitive in history, does something that seems impossible for a wanderer. The text states that he built a city and named it Enoch, just like the name of his firstborn son. Here, a logical contradiction arises that traditional historians fail to explain well. How could a cursed and resourceless man build a complex metropolis in the middle of nowhere? The existence of a city implies knowledge of urban planning, laws, and an organized workforce. This contradicts the idea that early humans were primitive herders living in caves. The answer is hidden in the genealogy of their direct descendants, the Cainites. We are not just reading a list of old names, but the curriculum of an industrial revolution. Lamech, a descendant of Cain, breaks the natural order by becoming the first recorded polygamist. But her 3 sons founded pillars of civilization that transformed the world forever. Jabal was the father of those who dwell in tents, but the Hebrew suggests something much more complex. He did not invent camping, but rather sophisticated mobile structures and advanced civil engineering. He developed a logistics system that allowed large communities to move and settle efficiently. His brother Jubal was the father of all who play the harp and the flute with technical mastery. The original term does not refer to simple music, but to the mastery of acoustics and resonance. In ancient times, music was a spiritual technology to alter states of consciousness. Jubal created the technical interface between the physical world and the invisible spiritual dimensions. But the third brother, Tubal-Cain, represents the most bewildering technological leap of all. He is described as a master of all works in copper and iron, a high-level metallurgist. The Hebrew word used implies that he sharpened and shaped metals with industrial precision. Tubal-Cain was not just a blacksmith, but an engineer who mastered alloys and temperatures. The text mentions iron and copper coexisting, something that challenges conventional archaeology. According to official history, the use of iron should have taken millennia to develop. These men did not discover these sciences by chance, but rather there was an unnatural acceleration. In just a few generations, they went from basic agriculture to metallurgy and acoustic engineering. If they achieved this in 7 generations, it is terrifying to imagine what they did in the following centuries. The Bible suggests that Cain was not alone when he founded his civilization in the land of Nod. The phrase, "met his wife," implies a deep exchange of knowledge and hidden wisdom. It is possible that Nod was not a desert, but rather an already existing center of forbidden knowledge. Here comes into play the intervention of beings that did not originally belong to the human race. Genesis 6 mentions that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and took them. These beings, known as the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, descended with a purpose. They did not come to observe, but to inject technological and hidden information into the human mind. The Book of Enoch recounts that 200 angels made a pact on Mount Hermon to rebel. Their leader, Semyaza, knew that what they were about to do would bring an irreversible curse upon them. However, they decided to share celestial secrets that humanity was not ready to handle. Azazel taught men to forge swords, armor, and to work metals for war purposes. She also taught the use of cosmetics and seduction, forever altering social relationships. Other watchers taught enchantments, astrology, and the reading of the signs of the stars. Penemu taught about writing and the use of ink, allowing for the manipulation of information. Sariel revealed the secrets of the moon and the natural cycles that govern agriculture and life. Each teacher delivered a piece of technology that seemed like progress, but enslaved mankind. Humanity received spiritual nuclear weapons when it barely knew how to cultivate wheat. This transfer of knowledge caused civilization to advance centuries in a very short time. But the price of this accelerated evolution was the genetic and moral corruption of the entire species. From the forbidden union between the Watchers and human women, hybrid creatures were born. The Nephilim were beings of colossal stature and an intelligence superior to that of any man. These giants began to oppress humanity, demanding resources that the earth could not provide. They devoured the work of men, until agricultural production was no longer sufficient for them. Then, they turned against the people, initiating an era of cannibalism and unrestrained violence. The presence of the Nephilim confirms that human biology was being radically altered. It was not just a matter of moral sin, but of a contamination of the genetic code of creation. The legends of all ancient cultures speak of demigods and titans who ruled the earth. Sumerians, Greeks, and Mayans describe beings who descended from the sky and taught advanced sciences. They are not isolated myths, but fragments of a collective memory about the Watchers and their children. The antediluvian technology allowed for constructions that we now consider impossible to replicate. Megaliths weighing hundreds of tons were cut and transported with inexplicable precision. The pyramids and ziggurats were not works of slaves with ropes, but of advanced engineering. It is likely that they used knowledge about resonance and acoustic levitation taught by angels. In addition to stone, they mastered genetic manipulation, creating chimeras and hybrid beasts. Ancient texts mention mixtures of species that violated all divine natural laws. This explains the mythological figures of beastmen that appear in ancient art. They also developed a deep understanding of meteorology and global climate control. They could predict and perhaps manipulate storms, passing themselves off as gods before ordinary men. But the most dangerous thing was the opening of dimensional portals through specific rituals. The Tower of Babel, built later, was an attempt to reclaim that technology of heavenly doors. The music and the temples served as machines to connect the physical world with the spiritual. All of this was happening while violence and depravity reached unbearable levels. God observed that all flesh had corrupted its way, including animals and nature. The biological purity necessary for the future arrival of the Messiah was in danger of extinction. If hybridization continued, there would no longer be any human being 100% human on Earth. Therefore, the divine intervention was not an act of cruelty, but a genetic rescue operation. The flood became the only way to sterilize the planet from this biological infection. Noah was chosen not only for his moral righteousness, but for being perfect in his genetic generations. His DNA had not been contaminated by the mix with the Watchers, nor by the engineering of the fallen. God decreed the end of that era and deliberately erased the traces of its advanced technology. 150 days of pressurized water destroyed cities, temples, and entire archives. The sedimentary layers forever buried the secrets of metallurgy and the magic of Enoch. What survived were only silent ruins that today perplex us with their size and perfection. Upon leaving the Ark, Noah did not attempt to rebuild the technological civilization that had been judged. The first thing he did was build an altar, marking a fundamental difference from the lineage of Cain. He understood that knowledge, without a connection to the Creator, inevitably leads to self-destruction. God established a covenant with the rainbow, promising not to use water again for a global reset. However, he left scattered fragments of history to serve as a warning for the future. The narratives about Atlantis or Lemuria could be distorted echoes of this lost world. The Sumerian gods, Anunnaki, are secular descriptions of the same biblical watchers. In Egypt, the primordial time of the Neteru coincides with the era of the celestial masters. Each culture held a piece of the puzzle, but the Bible provides the complete moral context. God's silence over those 1600 years is a way of protecting present humanity. If we had access to that lost technology, we would make exactly the same fatal mistakes. Human curiosity would lead us to open doors that we wouldn't know how to close again afterward. Jesus prophetically warned that the final days would be like the days of Noah before the end. This phrase does not refer only to evil, but to the specific conditions of that time. Today we see an alarming return to genetic manipulation and fusion with artificial intelligence. We are blurring the line between the human and the synthetic, just as they did with the hybrids. The modern obsession with extraterrestrial contact resembles the interaction with the Watchers. We seek saviors who come from the sky with technology, ignoring the real spiritual danger. The current weapons of mass destruction are the modern version of the teaching of Tubal-Cain. The climate engineering that we are trying to develop today was already mastered and misused before. We are rebuilding the Tower of Babel, but this time with digital codes and global networks. The story of the lost years teaches us that technical progress does not equate to moral evolution. A society can be technologically superior and spiritually demonic at the same time. The judgment of the flood demonstrated that there are limits that humanity must not cross without consequences. The megalithic ruins remain as silent witnesses that we are not the first civilization. We are a restarted humanity, living on the bones of a world that was believed to be invincible. Forbidden archaeology continues to find artifacts that do not fit into the official chronology. Complex mechanisms and ancient maps suggest a global knowledge that was lost all at once. The map of Piri-Reis or the Antikythera mechanism are just shadows of that forgotten science. God allowed these mysteries to persist, to challenge our contemporary arrogance. We believe we are the pinnacle of evolution, but we might be repeating a cycle of self-destruction. The lineage of Cain sought physical immortality through stone and metal, but failed. True permanence is not in the cities we build, but in our alignment with God. The giants fell, and their names were erased, while Noah, the simple man, endured. The secret of the lost years is that technology without divine ethics is a deadly trap. The hybridization that the Watchers attempted aimed to block the redemption of the human race. By corrupting the image of God in man, they sought to prevent the plan of salvation from being fulfilled. Therefore, the flood was an act of spiritual warfare, as much as it was a catastrophic physical phenomenon. The waters cleansed the land of genetic abominations to give a second chance. But the seed of rebellion survived in the memory and in the impulses of the human heart. Nimrod tried to revive the system of the Watchers shortly after the flood in the plain of Shinar. This demonstrates that forbidden knowledge did not completely disappear, but rather went underground. Secret societies throughout history have sought to reclaim that antediluvian wisdom. Alchemy and ceremonial magic are attempts to reconnect with the science of fallen angels. But the Bible is clear that there are mysteries that belong to God and that man should not touch. The barrier between the natural and the supernatural was established for a reason of cosmic safety. Breaking that barrier brought chaos thousands of years ago and could bring it again in our days. The fascination with ancient astronauts is a misinterpretation of this historical event. They were not extraterrestrials from another galaxy, but dimensional beings with a dark agenda. Recognizing this completely changes our understanding of the past and ancient religions. All mythologies point to the same historical truth, albeit with different names and masks. The flood is the most universally witnessed event in the history of civilizations. It is not a children's fable, but the record of a cataclysm that redefined life on Earth. The 1656 years are not lost. They are recorded in every geological layer. They remind us that divine patience is immense, but it has a definitive and terrible limit. When creation ceases to fulfill its purpose and becomes corrupted, the Creator intervenes sovereignly. We live in a time where the echoes of that ancient era resonate more strongly than ever before. DNA manipulation is once again making daily headlines in laboratories around the modern world. Artificial intelligence promises almost divine powers, just as the Watchers promised. We are on the brink of a new threshold that could trigger another type of intervention. Understanding the antediluvian past is the only way to correctly interpret our present. We are not evolving into something new. We are returning to something very old and dangerous. The Bible left the necessary clues for the wise to understand the times they live in. The secrets of Enoch, Lamech, and the Watchers are key pieces for decoding the future. History is not linear, it is cyclical, and patterns of corruption tend to repeat themselves. The flood erased civilization, but it did not erase the human tendency to want to be like gods. That is the true lesson hidden behind the genealogies and numbers of Genesis. God preserved the essential and discarded the superfluous to ensure our survival today. Now you know that the lost years were not a void, but an era of splendor and terror. Subscribe now to continue uncovering the mysteries that official history prefers to ignore.